I mean, that's my first line of advice to anybody. Like the best way to do anything is to do it. It took me a long time to just try to make comics. And who knew if you keep at it, you can get something done. And the reward of finishing something pushes you to do the next thing. The fear of failing, the fear of it being bad. For me, and I would say a lot of people I know, has been such a strong motivator to just not even try. I'm not seeing that weight on a lot of younger writers nowadays. Hi, I'm D. Bethel, the creator, writer, and artist of the existential Western webcomic Long John. You can find me at longjohncomic.com or at D. Bethel Comics on Instagram and Blue Sky, I believe. And you're watching and listening to Two Geeks Talking.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We are joined today by a long-time friend of the show. And by long time, I mean his last interview, for shame on him, by the way, was 11 years ago, back in 2015. I had him back on earlier with another amazing creator, Eben, from when they were creating Eben 07 way back in the webcomic days. But he is a graphic artist, he's a writer, he's a designer, he's an amazing talent overall, creator of his now rapping Long John comic. We're joined by the ever-talented D. Bethel. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, Kurt. Thanks for having me on.
It has been far too long, man. Like 2015, that is as long as you started running this comic.
It's it's one of those things where I just kind of been keeping my head down, and then I looked up and it was 11 years later. I'm like, uh-oh. Well, here we go. At least it's done. At least I got something finished.
Well, we're a little older, a little wiser, a little more gray hairs in places we don't want.
Indeed.
It is what it is. For those that don't know anything about yourself as a creative person, tell us who you are and what we're talking about here on Two Geeks Talking today.
Well, my name is D. Bethel, or Dan. It's totally fine. I've been making comics since 2007, starting with friend of the show, Evan Burgoon. We did a espionage humor parody comic called Eben 07 about secret agent janitors for about 5, 6 years. In 2014, I started up Long John, an existential Western webcomic about a cowboy who gets his clothes stolen. And despite the silly premise, it's a story of identity, trying to figure out who did this, why did they do this, how does he get his stuff back, and what kind of person is he without all the violent overtones and coverings and weapons that made him strong in the first place.
And I think that's what I found interesting about reading the comics from issues 1 to issue 6. And in this long career that you've had, especially with this comic here, it ultimately feels like a story of, at first, revenge, but then redemption.
Right, right. That's the thing. Early on, when I was telling some friends about the premise, they called it Breaking Good instead, in contrast to Breaking Bad. About what would it take to get a jerk to kind of realize, oh, maybe this isn't the best way to behave, right? Or what I use when I'm pitching the comic when I'm at shows or something like that is like one of the initial ideas was, what would it take to get that Clint Eastwood style, tough guy to cry? And what ended up with the thought process is like, what would the result of him kind of breaking down like that be? And what kind of situation would it take to get him there? At the end, you're left with this sort of dual status that you have to kind of choose between of like, do I want to be like a legend, a ghost, or do I want to be a hero ultimately? And we don't necessarily in the comic get to one of those 2 points, but he's definitely on the path to choosing his future.
That leaves it open to interpretation and to possibly future stories, either from a fan fiction standpoint of someone that wants to take up the mantle, if they so choose. You've brought this fast-paced journey because in the 6 issues, it is a fast read because everything flows so smoothly from the character interactions to his own existential crisis, like in terms of seeing a book that he read back when he was a child, way back when, like a memories from the past surfacing. It's just incredible to see how quickly I read through it, and then I had to reread it. I was just like, did I miss anything? No, this is just it was a greater read even for the second time. But in this 11-year process, though, it wasn't all smooth for you. Did you have droughts in your creativity? Did you have droughts in your writing? Like how did you overcome some of those?
Well, the biggest drought or berm or just wall I ever encountered was mostly just kind of what we're talking before we started recording, like paying the bills, right? And so my day job takes a lot of time. I'm a university professor of composition and rhetoric. So basically, I teach those first year writing classes. And so I can only really work on the comic during the summers and whatever I can get done during the winters because once papers start coming in, I have it between 125 and 150 students every semester. And they're turning in 3 papers each. And so once papers start coming in, my job is just to make sure I get them as much effective feedback and instruction as possible. So a lot of the comic creation process becomes just sitting in the back of my brain, churning away. And so one of the biggest droughts, I guess you could say, is that there were times when I just literally could not work on the comic. And so the struggle there as a creator is like, what can I do in the meantime so I don't feel like I'm just letting it languish? I kind of developed a process, as every creative has already, of like working out small plot points, pushing ideas to really get to the best idea possible. Always taking notes. I walk around with a little notebook journal, and I'm always writing in there, so that when May hits and those grades get turned in, I can just hit the gas pedal, right? And so the biggest thing is, I'm glad it was an easy read, but the one thing that also kind of I think about when I hear that, and it's not a bad thing. It's like, oh, but that was 11 years of work, right? But that's also just the fate of comics. It's like it takes, especially if you're doing it all yourself, it takes a long time to do. And so, going back to your question, how do I overcome those droughts? Honestly, down to one word, patience. Really learning to go like, I'm ready to get to work when that opportunity finally opens up. And honestly, there were points where I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this. Hitting that 10-year mark was hit hard emotionally. I'm like, oh, what am I doing, man? And then knowing that I was almost done and kind of realizing I had the final issue plotted out really was a great motivation to push through and get it done and make a very big book. That last book is huge. It's like 60 pages long.
Yeah, but it didn't feel like 60 pages. Like that final journey at the end was just so amazing to see because I went back to school between our conversations. I went back to school myself for visual arts and communication media and film. So I learned the fine art side of things. I understood, like I got to work with Indian ink and pen and nibs and things like that. But I gravitated more towards photography. But in looking at especially your black and white style, which I loved. I've always loved your style of just hatching and the shades and your use of shadow and in tight spaces was just incredible, especially with Hellrider conversations too. Like just I was just like, this is beautiful. Like I love that type of composition because it takes a lot to remove the negative space from panels when you're just bleeding black, and it's just those subtleties that you see where it just brings you to a different place in time, and I think that was just incredible to look at.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And it's funny because one of the things, the talents I developed over the course of doing this comic is that I don't have an overly rendered style like Marvel artists from the 90s or something that's like super detailed, super realistic. And so there came a time where I'm like, when I'm designing a page, I'm like, do I want to render this in black and white? Or how much of this can I leave to when I color it? And I put color in quotes because it's a very limited color palette that I use in the comic. I think at the beginning it was only 3 or 4. It expanded to like 8 by the end of it. So like there's some shots, like especially if you look at the last volume, some of those pages are on the website now, longjohncomic.com. Look at the actual drawing of it, it's pretty sparse. But I'm like, okay, well, I can fill in the background and not have it distract from the foreground that I want you to look at by rendering those shapes with shading, like grays and browns and stuff like that. It was fun to develop that kind of skill. I'm like, what should I leave for the digital part of making this comic, which is the coloring and the lettering, and what should I actually put on the page? Which when I was doing Ebon 07, it was much more utilitarian. Like the stuff I'm going to do on digitally is the stuff I don't want to draw by hand. But becoming a better artist over these years, it really became like, which tool do I want to use and which tool would be best, kind of speaking to what you're talking about, to present this scene or even just this panel, right? I became such a stronger artist. The way I approach any art, I don't do a lot of pinups and stuff like that. Nothing against that. That's where the money is, honestly. Gaining technique just by focusing on story. What do I need the character to capture in this moment? Hopefully, that emotion or that idea, that feeling transfers to the reader as well. And that's a delicate balance, and there's no guarantee that they're going to feel the same way, right?
I think balance is interesting, especially from a character perspective, because while you're focusing on Long John as the main character, the supporting characters that he interacts with throughout the series is rather unique and interesting because they're showing, say, a bumbling merchant to a guy covered by greed, in terms of your baron type thing. But confronting his true identity throughout the series is rather interesting because you've taken everything away from him. What was that first internal shift where you wrote him like that, though?
Where he actually starts making that change? That's that's a good question to ask because that point kept shifting as I was writing. I really started thinking about that shift happening in chapter 4, which is the a self-contained chapter where he's just hanging out in a saloon, right? That's actually the book where you pointed out we learn a little bit about his childhood, and we also through mostly visuals learn about what happened to him that caused him to become Long John in the first place. But then I knew I wanted that really dark scene to happen at the end of that chapter. I'm like, well, this is going to be sort of the rock bottom he hits. Well, I guess the turning point is like realizing let's get him what he wants, which is his clothes, a superficial, materialistic goal. And then realizing once he get, I guess spoilers, once he gets those clothes, to realize that it's not making him feel any better, that there's something else that's missing, right? And that's kind of what sets off, especially the final book of like, okay, let's find out what he really wants, dealing and living with the consequences of every choice he's made up until that point. So yeah, that's the last half of the series. The books 4, 5, and 6 was really the confrontation of him with who he wants to be, which is different from who he felt he should have been.
I found that interesting. Like, this entire series felt like it could be live action. I could see this as a short series of some kind, all contained within your book. So you already have the screenplays. Just saying, if you wanted to dive around Nevada or something like that. And
That's really funny that you mentioned that. A couple of years ago, I don't know if you heard this, but my book was optioned by a company called Barry Lyndon Productions, which is owned by the actor Chris Pine. It had a deal set up with the American network FX as an animated series. They came to an amicable conclusion, and so they're kind of figuring out where they want to put it now. The pitch was as a limited series live action and has since switched to animation. So yeah, right now they're developing a pilot with the animation company Floyd County Productions. They're the company behind Archer and whatnot. And they're going to do sort of a spec script and kind of shop it around to see if there's a home for it somewhere. It's a long, quiet process. And that's the thing. It could still never happen, but it's been a wild experience. And so you're very astute. Other people definitely felt the same way. And it's been a wild ride ever since that whole thing started. I was mostly wondering, like, I need to get the story done before anything comes out because I don't want to George R. R. Martin this, you know?
even though it's taken you 11 years to do that, you still completed your series before George R. R. Martin completed his. So you're one up on him there.
I wonder if my entire series came out since he released his last book. I don't know.
Probably did, to be honest. I find that interesting. The fact that animation, like, obviously it's a cartoon, you've done amazing work with it here. If they could get the same style as how you've drawn it in that animation, rather than going, say, like a Lower Decks type situation where it's very colorful and cartoony, completely, yes, 100% agree on that. It would be rather interesting because it just fits. Like, I've been working in TV film for the past 10 or so years now, and I love seeing the teamwork that is involved around these types of collaborations. And for yourself, as the creator of it here, looking into that window, looking into the live action or into the cartoon side of things, you have side stories that you included with this amazing series here. Talk about those stories and how those came about, because those artists that came with that were just beautiful and incredible. Like, I mean, on your same level of art.
But very different as well, like that's the reason why I did it. I knew I wanted, so there's a character in the comic named Hellrider Jackie, or also just called the Hellrider, this very mysterious figure wearing all black, a shredded bonnet and a skull mask, wielding a scythe. When I was conceiving of the story, Long John's arc was basically him interacting with two foils that could indicate the direction he goes in his life. One was this Hellrider character, and the other one is Rich Jack, the ostensible villain of the comic. And I developed the Hellrider character quite a bit as an idea. I've actually, she's the oldest character I've had in my sketchbooks, and then she has a very unique point of view on the world around her. She's kind of delusional, but also has a very, and depending on your point of view, a very valid point she's trying to make, protecting the natural reserve that she and her people are from. And so I wanted to tell a couple stories from her point of view. And knowing that I wanted to represent her sort of delusion visually, I knew that I couldn't do that. I don't draw weird very, very well. And so I have an old friend, a guy named Josh Toby. We went to elementary school together. We both started drawing together, basically, but we went in different paths. He went the fine art path with painting and traditional illustration. His style as a painter is surrealism, symbolism, or symbolist, I should say, style of painting. And I'm like, well, he would be perfect for this. And so I emailed him one day. I'm like, hey, Josh, do you mind lowering yourself to the level of comics and want to do like 8 pages for me? And to my surprise and joy, he said yes. I had a script and I did thumbnails for him, but I put in no detail. I'm like, everything around these characters, make it gross. Everything it turned in was just absolutely bonkers in a way that I love, but also really captured just this strange world of the Hellrider, how she sees it, that the natural world around her is not just beauty, it's alive, but it's also mysterious and it's also alien in a sense. Like it's beyond our ken in terms of we are a smaller part of a larger machine. If and when I do like a collected edition, hopefully I'm going to run a Kickstarter later this year. I would love to get Josh back on board, though I don't know if his schedule would permit it to do one more to kind of really tie it together because yeah, there's two short stories. One at the end of volume one called Save the Bones. Almost forgot. And then one at the end of volume four called The Patient Feast. And they seem to be kind of just weird standalone stories, but especially in the final book of the series, we see where these things start to intersect. And like, oh, there's actually like a weaving of these threads that all ultimately leads kind of what you're talking about to Long John making the decision. And so yeah, it was great to work with him. And it's the only time I've written for another artist, and it was terrifying.
But you're such a good writer as well too, though. It's not like you haven't done that stuff in the past as well. And the fact that you're guiding a younger generation in terms of your writing as a professor at a university is interesting to see too, because I'm sure since you started writing this series and you're finally completed it, you've gone through 10 or 11 years of students as well too. So what is this new generation writing about that gives you hope for the future of creative writing?
Hmm. I think in the last 2 years, we're seeing a generation of writers. No, I should say what I'm teaching is mostly argumentative writing, right? Traditional essays, but I let them write about whatever they want as long as they're performing a certain task in their essays. Just more and more people are have creative endeavors. They're not afraid to just try stuff. I mean, that's my first line of advice to anybody. Like the best way to do anything is to do it. Yeah, I know for me, it took me a long time to just try to make comics. And who knew if you keep at it, you can get something done. And that the reward of finishing something pushes you to do the next thing. But the fear of failing, the fear of it being bad, at least for me, and I would say a lot of people I know, has been such a strong motivator to just not even try. I'm not seeing that weight on a lot of younger writers nowadays. There a lot of people just like I make videos, I write stories and put them online, and put them out for everybody to see, and that's incredible. I think in the future of creativity is in safe hands, even if sometimes I don't really understand the kind of stuff they're making.
Yeah, I find that interesting. I work with a younger person on film sets. He's the son of the TV and film guy that I've worked with over the past 10, 12 years now. And so his vernacular, his whatever the vernacular is these days for kids is completely different than than our age. So he's saying words and things, and I'm just like, okay, what's the translation app I have for this? You know, like how can I work through this? And it's just a different headspace, I think, for the same things that we went through as you know in our teen years type situation. So
Yeah, yeah. I think part of that is the democratization of creativity
yeah,
in that, especially for like what do I want to call it, like the higher investment arts, like film,
yeah,
music, a lot of the access to actually make quality sounding or looking or final product kind of stuff is much lower. Like GarageBand comes installed on your Mac when you buy one, right? And like people, professional musicians have released albums through just by using GarageBand, like an iMovie as well. Like there's which is based on Final Cut Pro, right?
Mhm.
Like so it's never been easier to actually make stuff. The sort of the culture of encouragement that we see on social media, I think, has been a blessing and a curse. But I think we'll only learn if it's a curse down the line. It's all still so new
Yeah.
that we'll see what kind of creative culture this makes only by seeing how things fall into place.
Yeah, it's amazing what's so consumable these days, especially with mass media, with whether it's books or podcasts or whatever's on the 20 million streaming platforms you have access to. But for you, what is it that fuels your consumption these days? What's something, either a book, a podcast, or show that you think just kind of drives your creativity?
Hmm. Probably the most inspiring thing I've consumed over the last couple of years was a show originally for HBO and eventually was also put on Netflix called, it was an animated series called Scavenger's Reign. Actually, I'm wearing a Scavenger's Reign shirt right now. But it's just so wildly inventive and was made kind of collaboratively. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a science fiction show about a ship, colonizing ship, basically, that crash lands on an alien planet. And the people that survived the crash are scattered all over the planet. And it's just stories about them surviving, but it's so weird and creative and captured a tone that I'd only really seen in like European comics, like Mobius, or more recent stuff, comics by people like Simon Roy and Yanni Milaniani, to just capture this otherness and bring it to you in a very consumable and effective manner. So even though it feels super weird, it feels super artsy, and it feels super, in some ways, pretentious, it's an engaging story, just like any good movie or show is. And I'm pointing everybody, as many people as I could, especially when it's up for renewal for a second season, which it didn't get, unfortunately. I'm like, look at this stuff. This is the kind of stuff I'd love to see. It has no, it has, it's not afraid of being quiet, of being slow. That same team went on to make the animated series Common Side Effects for HBO. They've been winning awards and stuff all over the place. So I'm really happy for their success, although I'd love to see more Scavenger's Reign.
You've given me two shows to watch now. This is good. I like it.
Yeah. Well, people should also watch Primal. That's a wonderful animated series as well. A little more violent, but definitely a good study in animated acting because there's no dialogue at all. But anyway, I'll stop talking.
That's good. I like it. I think that's amazing. So because you're seeing this type of animation and these types of series here, going back to Long John, some scenes just hit harder than most. Whether it's emotional, whether it's action, whether it's a shock like you didn't expect it happening. Was there a scene in the Long John series that hit you hardest emotionally while you were drawing
Yeah, yeah. And so if you're following the comic online, don't listen because the page hasn't dropped yet. But so like I said, Hellrider Jackie is a character in some shape or form I've had in my sketchbook since high school. Um, and being able to actually bring her into this comic originally kind of as a goof, it was an inside joke between me and my friend Josh Toby, the guy that drew those short stories, because we came up with the character together back in high school. When Long John lays Jackie to rest in the lake, and she descends into the water, I actually got it. I was not expecting it. I wasn't like this is going to be emotional, but it was just when I was doing the thumbnail drawings, not even drawing the page yet. Seeing her descend into the water, knowing her story is done, just knocked me flat. It was crazy, and I don't usually get emotional. I don't find drawing cathartic at all, but there is something about a sense of finality, a sense of, at that point, 30 years of being with that character, kind of bringing her to an end and knowing that at least to me, feeling that I'd done it well was, I guess, a weird kind of like I pat myself on the back. I'm like, yeah, you did it. You did it. And she was, and I still like the final page also turned out great. And the other page is actually the final thing I drew for the comic is a two-page spread where it's right before that page I was just talking about, where Long John is holding Jackie's dead body, standing on the shore, looking over the water to the mountains. And that was when I'm like, okay, I'm done tinkering with this. I got this page done, and this is what the comic is to me. That two-page spread is, yeah. And that's why when I did the pre-order for volume six, I included that as like a mini print. Uh, People just thought it was like a nice, landscape. I'm like, no, this is the comic. This is everything that I care about in one image. So yeah, those two pages. Good question. I hadn't thought about that.
That kind of leads into, and this might be the same answer, I'm not sure here, but if you had to delete everything but one Long John page, which survives and why?
It's a different page, I would say. Hmm. The first one came to mind is the one I'm going to commit. It's actually early in the series. It's when Long John wakes up, leaning against the Tufa Tower on the shores of Mono Lake, because that was the image, right? That kind of started everything. It's literally the first confrontation he had, which is, who am I? Right after being knocked out and left for dead, he's like, who am I? Where am I? Where do I need to go? And everything starts there. Yeah, it'd be that page. That's the page I'd put on the wall. There's one more, maybe if I were to cheat. There's a page from chapter three that I drew, and my friend Josh, who did the Hellrider Jackie short stories, was visiting. He inked my work, and it was the first time we've ever worked collaboratively. So that is actually on my wall. Long John coming down the mountain. Yeah, so I drew that, and I told him that I'm terrified of drawing rocks and boulders and trees. He's like, that's the stuff I love to draw. I'm like, all right, you want to ink it? So he gave me this beautiful piece of work. And so I will cherish this forever.
Yeah, that's definitely a beautiful piece for sure. It's the one thing that's interesting is since we've last talked, the comics
Mhm.
landscape has shifted in many different areas,
Yeah,
whether it be AI, whether it be digital versus physical artwork, which still comes up for some reason, or
sure.
artists versus writers, or whatever the
Right.
latest debate
Yeah,
is. I don't know. How has the landscape shifted from your perspective in this
yeah.
decade plus 1 year since your last visit on Two Geeks Talk?
Quite a bit. I'm going to focus mostly on just the webcomic landscape since, I mean, that's how we started, right? That is just not, it's just so, it's not even the same. It's not recognizable. In that back in the day, we're talking like the late aughts, right? It was kind of like have your own website, use WordPress, use Comic Press, and have ads, Project Wonderful, all that fun stuff. There were pop-up companies going like, "Hey, we're a web comic hosting service, and like come here and read a bunch of comics and we'll update regularly." We're like, that's ridiculous. And now the idea of kind of having your own website and posting your comics to that is the ridiculous point. And whereas things like Webtoons or previously Tapastic, is it Tapastic? Tapatico? No, Tapastic. Um, yeah, exactly. Most people that read comics online, Webtoons is webcomics because I've run into students that love comics, and I say I make webcomics. Like, oh, you're on Webtoons? I'm like, no, that's a form of webcomics. Yeah, in a lot of sense, in many ways I'm a dinosaur, but definitely when it comes to webcomics, continuing to host my own website and post my comics there is outside the norm. But also, I like early in Long John, I don't think I posted to Webtoons, but I posted to Tapas and wasn't getting a lot of traction, not in a negative way. I think for Webtoons and Tapas before it, like there is, I think a certain genre themes that people go to something like Webtoons for that Long John is not. But maybe I could give it another shot. But that's the kind of thing I noticed most, which is the shift to a hosted platforms for comics, and that being a really easy way to get in, much easier than it was for me back in the day when you had to program your own site or find someone who knew how to do it, right? But also, I think it's a bit the comics landscape, especially for indie comics, is a little more predatory. Like the one of the reasons why I haven't gone to Webtoons is because I've heard from lawyers that don't like the terms and conditions of that site because a lot of, especially for those titles that do well, they have first right refusal to make it into anything they want, honestly. So a lot of the stuff that's out there, it kind of just feels like, oh, it's an IP farm dressed as opportunity to get your work out there. And it's kind of scary. But I think kind of what we're talking about before, I think there's more webcomics out there than ever before and that are better than, bad. In terms of the comics landscape, I think we're watching the big two, if you will, just kind of flail and figure out what they're trying to do, what the future holds. I don't know. I'm not willing to predict the future of comics in that regard because I don't even know if they have any clues.
Well, it's pretty odd when you see like the awards for comics, and you see DC and Marvel in under the web comic category, and it's just like, really? Are you sure you didn't like misplace that into one of the other categories? Like,
Yeah. Or when you see like big publishers like I don't know if Marvel and DC have done it, but definitely have seen I think Dark Horse, Boom have like gone to Kickstarter, which I think is kind of weird. You see big companies, corporations go to Kickstarter for stuff, and like there's an argument to be made though for it. If there's actually a market for this product, then people will pay for it. But also the idea that Kickstarter was for the small guy, right? It seems weird, but it also speaks to that kind of pseudo predatory nature of a lot of media of or opportunities out there. I don't know. It's weird.
it definitely is. It's an ever changing landscape, and it's only going to get. You only have so much time to get the eyes on what you're creating, and that's why I still keep doing the show after 18 years or so. And
Yeah.
it's just
Congratulations, by the way. It's incredible. Yeah.
who knew saying the dreaded phrase nowadays, "Let's make a podcast," would actually like come to bite you in the ass after a while.
Right.
So. But I get to meet wonderful people like yourself and Evan and all these other people, 1,200 plus interviews over the decades. You know, it's
Yeah.
just
Incredible.
crazy.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, we'll go with incredible. But for you though, is there any other new projects you have in the works, or are you just kind of decompressing after working on this for like 11 years? Like, is there anything new creatively you want to get into, whether it's comics or what?
Yeah, I got what I when people ask me what I'm going to do next, I'm going to do small stuff for a little bit, one shots, just so I can get maybe a book a year and just have more to offer to table at shows and to host on the store and the website kind of stuff. But yeah, I've got about two or three shorts, kind of like 40, 50 page long ideas. Beyond that, there's like an ongoing series idea I've had in the back of my head for a while. Some bigger projects, but I don't know. I'm more really excited just to try to tell different stories. One of the difficulties with making Long John has been that I'm the Western guy. I'm like, uh, I like Westerns fine. I'm not a Western guy. I didn't get into web comics to make Westerns. I think they're fine. Again, I got nothing against them. I guess I do like Westerns, but I wanted to tell this story about this character that just happened to take place in 1881 in California. I've actually been writing about this on the website recently. I'm not here to engage in the joy of playing with the tropes of a Western. If anything, Long John is trying to deconstruct those a little bit. And so there's not an extra, you know, Western that I have in the back of my mind. I do have a sequel idea for Long John if the need arises, but it's not like I'm itching to do it. I have 2 degrees in English, right? I want to tell quiet stories, personal stories that I hope take advantage of the medium of comics. Because I don't think I'm going to your other point of your question there is I don't think I'll break from comics. I think I'm this is my medium. This is how I tell stories. This is how I think creatively at this point. If anything, I'm a little scared to draw like something like cars again. Like that sounds terrifying. Give me a horse any day of the week.
I mean, technically, they both have four wheels. I mean,
Indeed.
like,
And horsepower. Yeah.
yeah.
So we're set. Yeah.
But it's good to break away from something you've already done. It's not like you have a comfort zone, like you mentioned, like the fact that you drew Western for 11 years, the fact that you did work in janitors that were also spies, or assassins, and you've done many different genres. So I think maybe do a sci-fi, maybe do a futuristic thing, or whatever the case may be. Whatever floats your creative boat.
Yep. We got ideas for all of them. So hopefully I'll get to them eventually, health permitting.
Well, stay healthy there for sure.
Thank you so much.
Everyone has one person that inspired them on their path to where they are today. Who was that for you?
Hmm. I remember your questions. I don't remember my answers from last time. So, yeah. After all this is done, I think the thing I keep coming back to, I'm not going to run down and get it, uh, but my grandfather, my dad's father, who I never met, he died in the 50s. But he was a graphic designer, commercial artist for like a supplements company. But he wanted to break out of that. He wanted to do his own stuff. He wanted his own client base, and he actually pitched a comic strip two comic strips to a local newspaper in Los Angeles, and they didn't get picked up, but I still have one of those pitches, and my dad got it framed for me, and he was an incredible artist, and to think that I was able to complete a story. Sure, it's not in a major publication or owned by a major publisher, but again, times change. But I keep coming back to the small piece that I have on the wall and going like, oh, I wonder if he'd like what I do. And the nice thing is that my dad has said nice things about my art to me, saying that my grandpa would have liked it. So it's nice to have as a reminder of like, oh yeah, like things can take time, but also just getting stuff out there to the best of your ability is all that you can do. And you know, especially when with my grandfather who died fairly young, just getting as much out as I can to the quality that I'm happy with is my only sort of goal for success of like let's get stuff done. Let's get stuff done. So yeah, looking at that piece that my grandfather did is probably the biggest inspirations I've had over the last 11 years.
From a professional standpoint, you're of course a professor. You are a talented comic creator, and you've just finished Long John after 11 wonderful years here. So, from a professional standpoint, you are successful. Do you do you consider yourself personally successful?
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. Just because um it's so easy to fail that the harder thing is to keep coming back to the table and getting something done. Um, like I said, my goal, sure, maybe they were different when I started. Maybe it was, especially with Evan 07, maybe to like get a TV show, or maybe it was to get a publisher or something like that at some point. But none of that matters because uh, whether Long John gets a publisher or if a TV show gets made, I have this 250 pages of comics that I did that is available for people to purchase, and no one can take that away from me. Um, it's weird talking about the comic with um, people outside of comics sometimes. Like I was talking to the guys that optioned the comic from me and talking about making a TV show, and we're talking about they're asking me questions about the world and about the characters, and there's this weird realization that hit me like all this stuff they're referencing, all this these characters and these motivations and these plot points and these highs and lows of storytelling. It all came out of one hand, right? And like as long as I keep using that tool, then I'm a success. I don't care if money comes with it at all, you know. Yeah. 11 years has definitely changed my definition of success and has made me more sure that I'm happy with the level of success that I've attained for sure.
Nice, love it. That's a good answer.
Thank you.
The reverse of success is failure. How do you deal with your failures?
Oh, I love it. Actually, I love it because it was the biggest hurdle I had to, as I was talking about earlier, the biggest hurdle I had to surmount, or as a younger person, was the fear of failure. But knowing that you can draw a page and it's absolute garbage, I'm like, okay, what did I do wrong? I can either accept it and make the next page better. Or I'm like, we can tweak it. Let's make it better. And usually, what I've learned is that every failure in terms of drawing a bad page or making a bad book, I'm not going to say which one. There's a book in my series that I don't think is the best, and there's a lot of reasons why. But I think I took those lessons and made every book that came after it exponentially better. But what have I learned from my failures is that they are, and this is just any type of creative endeavor. It's an opportunity to reflect and go, what did I do? What do I do to not either not do that again, or to make that failure into something that works, you know? And so I do a lot of reflective writing, journaling, and stuff like that, where I just love to sit there and deconstruct when I screw up, because only good can come out of it, in my opinion.
So you have many books of failures that you've written down in.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Sounds like you should make that into a collection of notes or
Right?
something like that. The younger generation is looking at your work and they're becoming inspired to be creative in their own way. And the fact that you're teaching the younger generation and they're looking at your knowledge base as a way to guide them in their future is a wonderful thing to see. How can they support the next generation that follows them?
Hmm. Hmm. To be kind, to listen, listen to what the next generation has to say, be kind with the feedback, not coddling, but to understand that to improve, to have people learn the lessons that you have is not to tell them what to do, but to hopefully ask questions so that they can come to their own conclusions. And so, honestly, the best way to foster the next generation is to not say things were better in my day because they weren't. Ask the generation before you. But uh, to understand that even if what the next generation is doing is weird to you, that like it's it's a journey of discovery and for meaning, and that it might not mean anything to you, but it means something to them. And what you can do is just ask them about it. Be interested. Ask questions so that it will get even better, and they can create a foundation of creativity that makes the generation after them even better. I think also just listening, encouraging them to ask questions so that they can see. What I'm trying to get to here is like introducing them to the stuff that inspired you, not because of the trap we often fall into is that older stuff is better, but to actually show that there's a continuity, right? That everything connects. That the struggle to be unique is not unique, and that even if you don't directly base something you're making on something that came before, culturally, there's an undercurrent there. And that you can actually learn a lot from seeing what has come before, even if what you're doing is a reaction against it. So, yeah, just like encouraging conversation so that we can keep the conversation going instead of cutting people off and saying that it's bad or that you should be more like me. But like that, let's have that discourse so that um, the generations can be a part of each other's work along the way. So listening, encouraging, asking questions.
That's great. Last question is just wrap up and ask where we can find you and support you, of course, as always, like we should. If your life was a comic book, what would its title be? And what would its soundtrack be?
Oh man. Well, I guess successful failures, right? We already hit on that. What would its soundtrack be? Oh man. Honestly, as much as I want to say something with a good bop and rhythm and it'd probably be something vibey, something ethereal, something, like I like a lot of the music, like video game music by people like Austin Wintory, or just to point to a few video games recently, like there's a game called Stray, about a science fiction game about a cat with an incredible soundtrack that's a little bit menacing, but also just like calming. Um, but also something with a pretty melody, just because I like good melodies. Um, yeah, successful failures with a good chill soundtrack. That's the Dan Bethel story right there.
Well, unfortunately, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. You have to come back on more than 11 year span every time. That would be nice.
Absolutely, I should have, but I don't know why. I don't. It's hard to self promote, and so it took me 11 years to maybe realize I should just reach out. It's easy.
Well, I'll always make room for you for sure here. For those that want to support you and support Long John and anything else that you create, where can we find you? How can we support you and everything along that line?
Um, you can the best place to go to find me after Long John is just to go to dbethel.com. Um, and all my links are there. But longjohncomic.com, Deep Ethel Comics at Instagram is where I do most of my social media-ing. But you can also find me at Blue Sky at Deep Ethel Comics as well. So check out right now, check out longjohncomic.com. Read the comic online for free. Buy the books digitally or physically. A bunch of extra content in the books that are not online. But yeah, I will definitely come back around when I start doing the next thing because it's been an absolute honor and privilege to be on your show again. I'm ashamed that it took me so long to reach out.
Well, you're back. That's all that matters, and we'll get you for a third time on, hopefully sometime in the near future for sure.
It'd be an honor.
Like I said, that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. You can, of course, find this interview and 1,200 plus others on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TGT Media. Search the podcast by searching Two Geeks Talking. That's TWO Geeks Talking, wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm on social media at Kurt Sasso, at Two Geeks Talking, wherever you do your socials. And as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching on Two Geeks Talking.